We had sent a team down to the state to report on what was going on down there in an average winter. We called it Project 15 million because it's generally well accepted that 15 million baby lambs freeze to death in Victoria every year because of the way that the lambing schedules are now operated by industry. It's never about whether animals are suffering, it's about the way that it's going to affect commerce.
So in July 2018, we had enough money to fly to Victoria and meet up with some of the carers down there that had seen this all too often. So we set out to have a look at some of the farms, and what we saw was absolutely devastating. We desperately tried to find survivors in amongst the lifeless little bodies that we saw in the paddocks. The wind there is so cold, it's bitterly cold, and there's no windbreaks, no cover for them, there's no shelter. So these poor little ones are dying within the first 48 hours of life, due to the cold. The use of genetic technology, twins, triplets, and even 5 to 6 lambs can be born to each ewe. We found a number of dead ewes that had died whilst giving birth. At one farm in particular, I could see so many dead animals from the roadside that I attempted to find the property owner, documenting what I was seeing along the way. But I quickly realised that no one lived on the property. It's just one after the other. And I'm just so sad that we weren't able to get to them in time. I wanted to do this unedited so you can see it in real time, just how many that we're talking about here. There's another little darling. We were desperately trying to find any of the survivors, and finally, it took a few days, but we found Scarlett. She was tucked in amongst sort of long weeds that Mum had obviously tried to, protect her from the wind. Mum had perished, and Scarlett would have died if she had, stayed there for the night. So we quickly whisked her to the car in the warm heater and got her back and to give her colostrum and all the care that she needed to keep her healthy.
What are you doing? What are you doing?
Oh, he's so cute.
We walked into the office there and saw this very dirty, muddy little boy sitting in a cardboard box. So we carried him out to the car, and generally you wouldn't bathe sheep because they have their own natural lanolin protection. But he was just so muddy with feces and he still had his umbilical cord, so we had to kind of weigh those decisions up and work out that he was better to have a bath so that he didn't cause any infection. So we gave him a bath which just turned that water completely black, and then we dried him off with a hairdryer. The generosity that we received on our journey from Victoria to Queensland was just amazing. We had people that we'd never met that just opened their homes and their arms to us. Gave us a really lovely warm bed to sleep in, with 2 little lambs running around their home. We also had a night at Where Pigs Fly Sanctuary, which was wonderful because the lambs got to have a really great run around in a paddock, a safe paddock as well, and meet other sheep as well. So that was wonderful. So it was quite a grueling trip. We had a camper van so that way we could heat bottles to feed them, because at that stage they're at about every 3 or 4 hourly feeds. So as we were driving from Victoria to Queensland, we certainly felt the Victorian winter lift. It was getting much warmer. So by the time we arrived at Farm Animal Rescue, of course, it was beautiful and sunny. So it was a perfect environment for them to take their coats off and just run around and be lambs. Of course, in that time, we had built a very close relationship. I mean, we were their everything. But I also knew that they needed to be sheep. They weren't humans, and so I stayed away for a couple of weeks in order for them to just join the flock of sheep that already, have Far as a home.
It was quite opportune at the time because we had about 3 more lambs coming around the same time as well. So we had this little band of lambs that were very close and had a lovely time growing up together. But unfortunately, when Scarlett was 2 years old, she had a problem with her intestines, and unfortunately she ended up with an intussusception, which is when the intestine actually grows into itself. And while we had put her through exploratory surgery, the vets could not find the problem, and unfortunately she eventually passed from it. Australian animal products are extensively marketed overseas as being extremely high welfare. So when there is a problem on a farm with an excess number of deaths or because of abject cruelty that's going on, government's overriding concern is to hide it and to make sure that information doesn't get to the overseas markets to jeopardise the high welfare brands that Australia puts out there. Their problem with sanctuaries and animal activists is that we are here to expose the reality of what goes on in these industries, to talk about what the real animal experience is.
Davis, come on.
I'm not ashamed to say that I cried, not once or twice, but several times. I cried for all the babies we couldn't save. I cried because we saved Scarlett and Davis. And I cried when I had to say goodbye to leave them to their new life. It's an experience I'll never forget, but one I'd do all over again to save but one life.